I think that everybody sometimes imagines their future, and as a teenager, I'm very excited about that because I have my own vision of the university, career, family, hobbies, etc. These decisions are really influential in my life. So, as I have nice relationships with my relatives, I thought that it would be a great idea to ask them for some tips. I decided that at least it could expand my mind and define the vector of movement I should follow. And when I got them, I realized that none of them fully fit me. There were parts of some ideas which seemed interesting to me, but I felt that I need to find something related especially to me. These thoughts made me study another interesting sphere, but still led to the answer to the question about my future. So, by coincidence, all people I asked were representatives of different generations. And throughout receiving some answers and getting tips, I started catching main ideas, values, and priorities that their messages contained. So, these thoughts made me study another interesting sphere of human behavior and psychology. It's generational theory. And as I got some answers, I started analyzing them. And I started catching the connection between them and characteristics of a certain generation that a corresponding person belonged to. So, what do you think is a generation? Generation is a social group of people who born in the same time. They have the same habits, values, etc. And their beliefs are different to some worldview of their predecessors. And this may be really useful for marketers who segment people into different groups. This may be useful for employers who want to create better conditions for their employees and realize their needs. And in the end, it may be useful for everybody who wants to become a better interlocutor. So, what do you think can shape a generation? What is this force? What can shape a generation? Conditions. Yes, you're right. The conditions and events that a certain generation experienced determine its future. So conditions and events may be political wars, stars of the time, it may be some trends, and simply put, these are trends at atmosphere that were presented when generation was forming. So my grandfather's advice was like, your work is the most important sphere of your life. All your attention should be paid to professionalism and correspondence with some organizational structure of the company you work for. You should pay as much attention as possible. So you can come home late, but you should focus on your career and don't hurry with that. He's a worthy representative of traditionalists, or how they were called earlier, silent generation. People of this generation are usually very loyal. They try to keep safety and maintain status quo. And now let's try to compare conditions that were presented when this generation was forming and the results that we have. Because this generation grew up during the period of industrialization and collectivization. So they've got used to fighting. They appreciate collective thinking. And they've got used to overcoming difficulties. And the thing they are focused on is work. So that's actually what can be traced in my grandfather's advice. And my grandma's advice was like, you should show your best, because you are the best. You should show loyalty to your employer, and I think that you should do your best anyway. You should do as much thing as possible and try to move horizontally, but mostly vertically in your company. And you should define some KPI with your employer, so then you can straight ask about a promotion. And she's the worthy representative of generation baby boomers. The Census Bureau describes the period of 1946 to 1964 as a baby boom. The birth rate increased from 3 to 4 millions. That was in USA. That's incredible. As they matured and became consumers, marketers started to promoting products to them, and it was so successful. So, people of this generation are usually competitive. they are confident and they're focused on the result. And that is actually what my grandma told me. And before we start in the next generation, here are another force that can shape a generation, that can shape a characteristics and worldview. So what is this force? How do you think?
Maybe relatives?
Yes, I would say that who are them? And they're really parents. So baby boomers are usually parents of millennials, and Gen X are usually parents of Gen Z. And studying other generations, we should pay a lot of attention to some characteristics of their parents' generation. So my dad's advice was like, you should try to be flexible and maybe move horizontally. You should expand your set of skills. You should be independent in everything. So these are his characteristics. He is really independent. People of this generation are realists and they are very resistant mentally. Because in the 1980s, economy went worse and worse. And everyone predicted that this would be the first generation to live worse than the previous one. Therefore, they are very skeptical and they are taught to estimate situation objectively, despite alternatives aren't very good. They began to appreciate what they have as their parents. So that was what was traced in his message. And my mom gave me some tips that I should value my contribution to the company. I should value my work. And I shouldn't lose some positive attitude to my sphere. I should choose the university I want based on my choice. It doesn't matter what society thinks. I should find the company where teamwork is well presented. So she is a great representative of millennials, or how they call Gen Y. People of this generation, they desire collaboration, meaningful work, and they seek work balance. And if we compare with some things that happened during the Reformation, we may see that their parents, as we've told, they gave them as much love as possible. So they tried to work with their schedule and they were full of tasks. They didn't have any time to just relax. And millennials don't want to repeat the situation. So they connect with their children, they try to behave with them better and to relax with them more and discover their playlists, discover making some photos with them and spend more and more time. And instead of scolding children, parents of Gen Y, so instead of scolding them, representatives of this generation were children who grew up in love, and their parents didn't scold them like their parents of traditionalists or other parents once did. But they gave them that and told them that their self-worth, they're really worth something. And as they grew up in love, my mom told me the same things, and that can be easily traced in her message. And after all these tips and all this advice, I talked to myself, oh, okay, your tips are very interesting and influential for me, and I really appreciate it, because in every message I find something both suitable and not suitable for me. In every message I find something very interesting that can influence my life. But then I recognized, stop, I have my own vision, I have my own worldview, I have my own values, and I should rely especially on them. So ladies and gentlemen, here we are, Gen Z. Moreover, we like when things are highly personalized. We're really into digital, so we've got used to having a physical or virtual analog of everything we have. That's the way we've got used to perceive information. And don't be excited when sometime in future you will see $1 billion contract with smiles. We have the fear of missing out. So we are scared of being just leave this stream with all of this information. And almost all people of Gen Z follow the do-it-yourself principle. We're individualists. We like to customize everything we have based on our own taste. And in the future, we're going to even name our positions at the workplace. So Gen Z is very individually strong personalities, and their employers should teach them how to balance individual work and teamwork. We're a generation who have limited attention. It's 8 seconds. That's the less that previous generations had. So we can easily lose the focus. But at the same time, we can easily switch between different tasks. So our future employers should teach us how to do this right. And each of representatives tries to create a unique image of their future. And everybody of us, I think, is registered on Facebook or Instagram. I even don't remember the last time I checked the short or lower ink in the search query. So, as you may say, why do you think generations are called like X, Y, Z? Maybe creators are keen on math? Truly no. I may say that marketers love easy to pronounce names. So it started from baby boomers who were called like that, and they didn't feel any displeasure because they felt the attention and they felt that it's honorable to belong to it. And then authors of other books started to name other generations, and then it was corrected by another authors, by representatives of other generations, etc. So now you may see how different we are and how are we going to communicate with each other. So how X's, how they haven't determined millennials, and how baby boomers are going to deal with Gen Z? That's a great question, because all of us are different. We have different features, characteristics, values, priorities. And the things we need to pay attention at when communicating with others is values of another generations, because we are not good or bad, we are just different. And as a good interlocutors, we need to find some touch points which correlate with values of a corresponding generation to create a connection with them. It would be easier. So knowing, if we know how to create these conditions and what are these conditions, we will present them to the representative of a corresponding generation. That's the main tip I want to give you. That's the main thing I'm talking about. So you should define the values of a corresponding person, then choose the following conditions that should be presented and connect them. So create the comfortable conditions for a representative of a certain generation. So I may say that now the next generation, Generation Alpha, is growing up. That's a generation to which my brother belongs, and I'm looking forward to define some features of their generation. But as for now, we need to be concentrated on the giving some comfortable conditions for a corresponding representative. Thank you.